Hey, what's going on, guys? We're back. Taylor Kyles, John Zannis, CLNS Media, here to talk about a um, relatively quiet second full day of free agency involving the Patriots. Couple moves, couple of, you know, guys scheduled to visit, but there's no earth-shattering moves. There's nothing I think that, right now is imminent. But that kind of becomes the story is
Mhm.
are people starting to get antsy here? And we'll kind of get your thoughts on it here. Uh, Listen to you guys in the chat, take some questions, and get your thoughts on kind of what you want to see the Patriots do right now. I do sense, Taylor, that there's a little bit of kind of like, what
Yeah.
can we do something? And again, warranted or not, I think that's what's going on, and we'll kind of get into it a little bit more as we kind of get into the show. Tell you guys
Mhm.
right off the bat, as always, segments powered by FanDuel, our exclusive wagering partners here at the CLNS Media Network. Go to fanduel.com/Boston. Take advantage of your offer. Bet 5, win 200. NCAA tournament going on right now. I know a lot of you are probably watching, have this on a second screen. We'll be watching throughout the weekend. Best spot to go kind of get in on that action, fanduel.com/Boston. Gets you that kind of code, gives you an opportunity to get started and do some stuff. Make some decent money here on some bracket busting upsets. Has already been won, so it's been pretty fun to watch. So let's get into the free agency. And again, relatively quiet, Taylor, but we'll kind of get your
Mhm.
thoughts on some of the things the Patriots did do. And one of them is, and where is it? Where is Robinson? They signed a running back to replace
Mhm.
Harris. We
Yeah.
think, and so kind of curious about your thoughts there. James Robinson, Jaguars, Jets. We know suffered a big injury a year ago, came back. Returned this year, wasn't 100% right. This is a guy who was pretty outstanding 2 years ago out of nowhere for the Jaguars. What does he bring?
Oh, well, actually just saw news that Van Ginkel, he visited the Patriots this morning. He
Yep.
is now headed to Vegas. So just an update on that. Yeah, so first of all, with this kind of part of free agency where things have really slowed down, real quick, I do want to say it's kind of a good thing because it usually means if there's somebody out there that you still want, they're going to come cheaper than they would have earlier. So it's kind of one of those wait and see things where it's not always bad when the Patriots are patient. But relative to James Robinson, I know a lot of people are skeptical about what he can actually produce because he went to the Jets and fell off the face of the earth. But after watching him on the Jets, it was pretty obvious there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone there for him. There were a ton of injuries on their offensive line, so he really struggled. Guy was getting hit at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage pretty often and had to make magic just to get back. But when you saw him on the Jaguars, and this is coming off an Achilles tear,
Yep.
which takes at least a year for most people to actually be able to just jog or I'm sorry, jog, run, whatever.
Right.
This guy came back and had multiple 30, 40-yard gains with the Jaguars. There was that one score I feel like everybody's seen against the Chargers where he had a big lane and he just took it to the house. I think that one was like 60 or 70 yards. So, like Harris, he's got great contact balance, great vision. One of those guys who does his best when he's inside the tackles. He's got really good feet. He reacts well to defenders and he reads the way things kind of play out really well to find daylight really efficiently. And Harris, what really I think reminds what a lot of people think of when they think of Harris, that Jets touchdown, it was 2 years ago, where he broke literally a million tackles on his way to the end zone. Not quite as much physicality, I think, but Robinson gives you a lot of that where, if a defensive back is trying to tackle him, they're almost always going to miss. I don't know how much of a receiving option he's going to be. He's not a super nuanced route runner at the NFL level, but he does have pretty soft hands. And again, because he's so physical and tough to bring down, he'll just run through DBs and be able to be like Harris, check it down, but he's probably going to get you a first. So, second string back, you still want to see how he is a New England system. Again, the Achilles is important to notice or to note, but at the same time, he was great with the Jaguars and then just stopped being good like every Jets back did once Veritucca got hurt. And obviously, Brees Hall suffered his injury. So, potentially exciting move, but one of those wait and see kind of deals as
But
well.
like, what is it? Where's the what I don't get, and I'm not questioning it, but it seems like they Patriots generally speaking with the running back position kind of view it as many other teams do now. Draft a couple guys, play out their rookie deals, let them sign elsewhere, unless they're specialist style backs who can come back in a pass catching role. Those are the ones you tend to see them retain, but again, not always. They let Vereen go to the Giants. James White obviously spent a career here. But James White was such a specialist that you're not going to mistake him for a 3-down back ever. So he really was, but anytime you see a back that might have early down value or 3-down value, and I'm not saying Harris is necessarily one of those guys. It's not something the Patriots are going to invest capital in, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What I don't get is, right at this point, there doesn't appear to be any market for Damian Harris, who was a nice complimentary back, and not complimentary, is a guy who could absolutely carry the load for you, and has. Is it strange that you're going to give this deal to Robinson? And not consider, just bringing back Harris. I'm not sure what's gained here, and I also don't know that it makes that big a difference.
Yeah, it was definitely strange to me. Although to be fair, Harris has made it pretty obvious on social media that something's going on behind the scenes. I think he retweeted something, posted something. He sounds very disgruntled. So I'm not sure what went on there.
He's disgruntled because they're probably not talking at all, is what I'm guessing.
Right. And maybe it's the injury history. I'm guessing the availability is the biggest factor there. Like, yes, Robinson does have a significant injury, but he bounced back from it at a superhuman speed. He's still just 24 years old, I believe, 24, 26. He's still a pretty young back. And he's more consistent in terms of he'll probably be available on game days for you more than Harris was, because he usually missed at least 5 games with some type of nagging injury. So I think that may be part of it. It is strange considering he seemed like a locker room leader, one of Mac Jones's best friends. In terms of keeping him around, if it could be affordable, I don't know why you wouldn't, even if he is injury prone. But again, the only thing about his game that I could see them not wanting to pay him for is the fact that his availability isn't very consistent. But even still, I thought it was a pretty strange move.
Yeah, strange. It's strange. It wasn't, it would make sense after Harris signed. Be like, all right, let me go get my veteran back for the room. I was very surprised to hear it before Harris signed. I guess that was the main thing, because again, I know he hit a couple of long balls. You said, last year, a few big runs, but I mean, this is a guy who ran a 4.65 coming out of college. He's not a burner, and he's not, and what you have in Ramondre. Who's obviously going to kind of take on, the full-time, very prominent role, is the assumption here. But I mean, I just figured this is the kind of thing where the Patriots would just, reload, grab your veteran cheap whenever you need it, and then maybe reload in the draft, which is what they usually do. They'll always draft a back in the 3rd or 4th round when they feel like they need to restock, give them that red shirt year, which Ramondre didn't have, that's to his credit. But again, slightly odd move, but it is what it is. As far as that concerned, even when we do talk about Ramondre, think about how often he's had to literally be the only running back getting carries. It happened his rookie year. It happened last year. Obviously, once they got to Arizona, they started to incorporate the younger guys. But really, if you're looking at the two players like Robinson and Harris, it's really the availability. So, hammer that home again. I think they're like, hey, Ramondre's our best player. We cannot have this guy getting the ball 25, 30 times every single game. Sometimes if you need him, that's what your star players are there for, to make those plays. But you also don't want the guy to have to carry such a massive workload, especially when he's a running back. Yeah, I mean, and Ramondre Stevens, for what it's worth, I think it was 5th, 6th. I think it was the 6th most yards from scrimmage in Patriots history for someone last season. And that's because they had to use him so much. And actually, it's the first year Jacoby Myers did not lead the team in receptions. I think Stevenson had maybe one more, or it was close.
Barely, because Jacoby missed some games. So
Jacoby missed some games because Jacoby was the leader among receivers in targets, receptions, yards each of the last 3 years. And I think Stevenson, Stevenson got a lot of touches. You obviously want to kind of scale that back. The other thing, as the Patriots continue to try to have the most mid off season in the history of off seasons, is look, here's the thing. We joke, you need you need depth guys. You need special teamers. You need guys who can do different things for you. The roster has 54 guys on it. You're not going to fill them all with superstars. It would just be nice to have one, I think. And that's kind of what fans are looking at. Fans are looking for something splashy. So every time you get a deal like this, I think a lot of people are like, okay, I understand. But
and somebody said in the chat, the guy
thing?
might get cut out of training camp. Like, I don't know. He might not even be on the roster. He only has $1 million guaranteed. So, he's not a lock, but I don't think you can watch him even as early as, again, with the Jaguars last year and say, oh, this guy's a watch. Like, I'm not interested because he's still very young and has plenty of potential. So
athleticism, he can run. You want to see, if you can use him. He did not play much defensively late in the year. He was mainly a special teamer. He did get reps earlier in the year. I don't think he took a defensive snap the last 5 games, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if that sounds right. So I don't know if this is just a special teamer type thing with the ability to play some, or if they have a larger role and vision where they might be able to use him and get a little bit more out of him because he is such a good athlete.
Yeah, we're going to see. With Mack Wilson, the reason he didn't play those games is because as athletic as he is, he was a major liability against the run, took some really bad angles, diagnosed plays pretty late, led to some really big gains for offenses. So I think you project him as someone who's going to be a special teamer. Obviously, you still put him on that linebacker depth chart. He played at Alabama. That's where he's been most of his career. But you have to hope that in training camp, maybe something clicks or he feels more comfortable. Something happens where he's less of a liability on the field outside of just being someone who in really obvious pass situations is a spy against, the more athletic quarterbacks and kind of just a very niche role where you're really just using him as a raw bundle of athleticism rather than someone you trust in your scheme to execute, multiple things. If it's an early down where you don't know if it's run, pass, somebody throws over his head on play action or uses misdirection to just freeze him, and then there's a wide open hole. So we'll see about his defensive contributions, but special teams, he's one of their core guys. So in that sense, especially with how much they struggled last year, at least having some familiarity to know what happened wrong and what you can improve on, that's a bonus.
Yeah, and this is, again, just as a reminder for those, the guy they got in exchange for Chase Winovich, who at one point showed some flash and some potential, but it fizzled out quick. But I do believe when they brought Mack Wilson in, they did envision a little bit more of a regular role, or at least they'd hoped for it. Am I not correct?
It's interesting because obviously they play safeties in the box all the time. So it's not like Belichick's afraid to put someone in there who's like 220, 215
a little smaller,
or anything like that. Right. But Mack was such just because he's very light, but someone like Kyle Duggar, he's got so much pop in his hands that there was a play his rookie year where I think Mekhi Becton tried to take him out, it was 2 years ago, and he put him on his butt. Like, usually you at least need to have strong enough hands or shock in there where you can have more of an effect in the run game and keep guys off you. Or you're like more of a Levante David type where less than stack and shed, you're just making guys miss. And you just didn't see that from Mack Wilson very often. So, yeah, I don't know how much of a role they necessarily had in mind for him. Like, Winovich was primarily a special teamer and sub rusher. But then once they got Uche, he was kind of just – they didn't really know what to do with him. So, yeah, I think it was more special teams in a very niche role, but it would be awesome if he can become more than that. But they already have Jelani Tavai, who they seem to like a lot. They just re-signed Raekwon McMillan, who is similar in that he needs to progress, but he has way more upside as someone who is more in the mold where he can stack and shed, take on offensive linemen, but also has the sideline-to-sideline speed, can cover athletically, but also has the same weaknesses where his coverage instincts aren't great, and sometimes he can be a bit of a liability against the run, but not nearly to the level that Mack Wilson is. So there's plenty of depth there. He doesn't need to play much.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's it for moves so far today. Are there more coming? Maybe. Should there be more coming? I think so. We're going to talk about that, the Patriots' urgency, and whether or not they need to be a little bit more aggressive here in free agency to kind of pick up whatever still, might be, might be hanging around at this stage in the game. We'll talk about a couple of names potentially that they could look at. One Taylor really likes. One, our pal Mike Cadlick over on Patriots Beat seems to really, really like, plus what that person might be asking for. First, we want to tell you, before we get into all of these players, again, a little bit more about FanDuel. And again, Massachusetts, you know by now, the wait is over. America's #1 sports book, FanDuel, live in Massachusetts. New customers get in on the action. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And again, it's tourney time, baby. This is one of those hot times where nobody knows what they're doing, but they just kind of act like they do. So do your research before you put anything real on the line that isn't just a bracket. But there's so many games and so much stuff going on. So check it out. FanDuel.com/Boston. Bet on all your favorite sports. Any of these tournament games going on right now. Money line, point spreads, player props, whatever have you. Really fun player props if you're into that sort of thing. It's an app that's really safe. I've downloaded it myself. It's extremely easy to use. So again, don't miss that chance at $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more in America's #1 sportsbook. But now we do need to tell you, you have to be 21 or over in order to participate and present in the state of Massachusetts, or a state that where sports wagering, sports betting is legal. First online money wager here, you have to, as we say, bet $5 to cash in on that $200 in bonus bets. You must deposit 10 to get started. The bonus that's issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire in 14 days rather. Restrictions apply. See the terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope and help is here. Go to gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. So the question being asked here by a lot of people, are the Patriots showing enough urgency in free agency? This is a dance we do every year. It doesn't matter what team you root for, Taylor, what sport it's in. When there's a chance to get free stuff, which is to say it just costs money, and you don't do it, and you watch other people get free stuff, which only costs them money and no assets, you're like, why didn't we get that guy? What are we doing? And that's fine if you think that the team has a plan or larger things in mind, or you don't want to do it. We've seen the Patriots fall on their faces recently as 2 years ago, charging out in front and throwing dumb money at a bunch of different people that did not end up making nearly the type of impact that you would have expected for the type of dollars they spent. Not everyone. Obviously, you have Matthew Judon and others who did, who kind of lived up to their hype. But it's more often than not a losing proposition, yet fans still get really worked up over it. Why didn't we this? Why aren't we that? And I think it's because you want them to get better somewhere, and this is one of those avenues. So I guess I'll ask you, should they have sold out somewhere for someone? If they could have a Bradbury, a whomever, and go get one blue chipper instead of kind of replacing Jacoby with Juju. Upgrade, sure, if you want to call it that. I think you think so. I think some people think so, but a marginal upgrade, and then everything else is just kind of filling in holes and depth pieces. It's a team that needs to get much better in a lot of places. Can you afford to just kind of wait to see where things fall if you're the Patriots right now?
Well, I think, and you touched on it, I think urgency is the wrong kind of approach, because you don't want them making a bunch of just rash decisions or anything like that. And I think if there was someone that they could have at a price that they were comfortable with, they would have. Now, it comes to the question of, like we talked about this yesterday, how much are they actually willing to pay someone, or how much are they willing to give up? And I wouldn't have been comfortable if they said, yeah, we'll give you a first round draft pick for Jerry Jeudy for 2 years, and then maybe we'll keep him. Or then, obviously you get a compensatory draft pick. It's not a total loss if you can't keep a guy like that. But I like the approach of waiting until some of the better players are going to come cheaper. Like Orlando Brown's a perfect example. He was one of the premier free agents this year. He didn't sign till yesterday, and it was for a deal that was way cheaper than anybody expected. So that's why I say the wait and see approach isn't as bad as people think.
Yeah, but then go get that. It isn't when you get Orlando Brown.
I mean, yeah, but okay. I'm trying to find a way to say this in a way I haven't said a million times.
When you get him for cheaper, it's better. When someone else gets him for cheaper, it also says, wait, you need tackles. Why can't you
But it's
pay
also
that for a
fit.
tackle?
But Orlando Brown, I do not think Orlando Brown should be a left tackle. If you're getting him for that kind of money, then, that's a little different. I thought he was better on the right. I didn't think he was going to want to play on the right. And he said he doesn't want to play on the right.
But they have
So,
money, right? People want to see him spend it. Are you going to get a bunch of $3 and $4 and $5 million kind of like scheme fit role player
well,
guys?
that's what this part of free agency is, like, realistically.
So
And then
that's
you
the
got
thing.
guys like,
Did they miss anywhere where they could have, should have, would have maybe taken a shot?
I mean, I've been asking fans this. I said it on Twitter yesterday. Like, who did they miss out on, and do you think it's going to
I
kill
don't
their
know that
season?
they did outside of maybe
No.
Bradbury, not miss out. But if you're going to talk, you want to lock. Here's the thing. If you have 3 positions, or maybe even 4, you've got to lock down, right? Tackle, receiver, your safety, cornerback. If you need that, don't you figure that like you can't do it. If you're going to do trades and draft, fine, but you're going to have to give up draft capital to do one of those things most likely. And then you've got your first round pick to address another, which means free agency is the other avenue to lock it down. If you're not locking something down in free agency in a set it and forget it sort of way in terms of a big roster need, then you're not going to do it at all because you don't have enough bullets left in the gun. There's not enough left. You don't have enough resources to do it elsewhere if you miss that shot. So because they have so many needs, it's strange to not see them aggressively pursue one of them, or something. That's all. It's like we know what it was. It was a weak wide receiver class. There was no guy to go out there and absolutely get. I think they did fine with what they did. But again, it's really just kind of swapping guys out. But they need something. So seeing a guy like Brown, whether you're not think he's a perfect fit, you need tackles. You need them, and instead you went and got a couple of mid guys, as you tweeted recently, or you saw the report. Looks like Reef's being played to come in and start, so do you want 2, 4, and $5 million guys, or just kind of draft a guy in the 5th round and pay somebody $15 million? What makes you better?
Well, it depends on the market. Like, think about it. The positions of need where they really are lacking. The free agency didn't have, like, safety, I think, may be the one position. It's kind of odd that they've been as quiet as they've been. Maybe they're just kind of wait and see what the contracts are. Maybe they think guys, aren't the best fit. Like, Jesse Bates made a lot of money. I don't think they wanted to pay him that, especially for the free safety role, as valuable as it is. Based on what you actually do, it's more of like an insurance policy. You're not trying to pay a free safety you shouldn't be wanting to pay a free safety $15 million, even if they're versatile, if they're mostly going to be back in the post, not actually doing anything but deterring throws and obviously making, 1 or 2 plays a game to stop a disaster from happening. So look at wide receiver, look at tight end, and look at tackle. They did not have great markets in free agency, but where are there a lot of guys that would be really good fits for the roles that they need? The draft. So what you do is you solidify those positions with
endless,
but you solidify it with proven players, right? But they're deep at all those positions in the draft where if they address it with their first 3 picks, they're fine. I genuinely think they can find starting caliber players, or at least someone who can rotate heavily enough, like if it's a defensive back, that their impact is still going to be felt and they'll be a significant factor in the season. So, you're saying they're signing all these like $5 million guys, and I know it's not going to move the needle, but Riley Reef gives you somebody who can play right tackle for you. Again, he's old, so I don't personally know if he can last an entire season, but his level of play last year shows you that he at least can be an option, and he's better than everybody else you have on the roster, right? Juju Smith-Schuster, yeah, he's not your number 1, but he's proven for years that he's a good number 2. He's really, really young. He's still only 26 years old. He's younger than Jacoby Myers, which is insane because Jacoby was joined the league in 2019, and Juju's been here since 2017. So you're getting guys where if you walk into the season, you say, we can still be productive. This person has a track record. If we can't get the player we want in the draft and maybe have to wait a little later and they become more of a rotational piece instead of a starter, that's what we do. So I understand it's really hard to sit here for, whenever the draft is, a month or 2 away, and just kind of sit on your hands while the Patriots are playing the long game. I get it. But they're making the moves that you need to make at this point in the offseason so you don't spend too much money on bad contracts or get players that aren't great fits like a Jonnu Smith or Nelson Aguilar, where you pay them pretty good contracts and everyone gets all excited, and then they can't produce at a consistent level, and then you have to get rid of them.
I don't disagree with any of that. Again, in theory, if the needs weren't so many and if there weren't so few, again, there's a lot of good blank in the draft, but they've got a single first round pick, a single second round pick, a single third round pick, and anything after that is a dart throw. Like, just maybe, who knows? If we get lucky, great. And yes, they've had luck in some positions drafting people a little bit later. In fact, you could even say that their late round drafting, mid round drafting is better than their early round drafting in the past however long. And you wouldn't be wrong there. But you have many needs, and you're running out of opportunities. Free agency is an opportunity to address one, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Everyone's saying be patient. They still have the draft and free agency. I mean, draft and possible trades. You know who else has the draft and possible trades, Taylor? Everybody. So that's the point.
But not everyone has Bill O'Brien. Not everyone has Adrian Clem. Not everybody has Steve Belichick. Like, the coaching matters. You need reliable veterans, and then you bring the young guys in. You know what I'm saying?
It matters, but again, sure, that the Patriots have always operated based off of a coaching advantage over other people, whether or not we think that it's as significant now as it was once upon a time. Again, Belichick is Belichick. I used to say, I think Belichick's worth 7 points every game in the spread. Mm-hmm. Home field is worth 3. Belichick's worth 7, Yeah. So obviously you have the huge thing, but that's a given. Patriots fans bake in a coaching advantage into their assessment of the team, knowing that it still exists. You're still woefully short in terms of talent, and everyone else has the same opportunity to continue to improve, to trade, to draft, to move up in the draft, to grab players. Fortune favors the bold in some cases, and yes, you can sign bad contracts, but again, you're taking an approach of, you're taking the approach of here's the thing. I think they're taking an approach of a good team or a team that's relatively set, instead of the approach of a team that has a lot of work to do.
Sure. Okay. But then we'll use the example of Orlando Brown, right? So, because everybody knew there wasn't a number one receiver on the free agent market. And then we've talked about the trade possibilities. They're not realistic. So then we'll go, okay, why didn't they sign Orlando Brown as the big ticket free agent, all that stuff? I've watched a lot of Orlando Brown. Kansas City's scheme helps him a lot. It's a lot of quick throws, a lot of underneath stuff, a lot of moving the pocket, either bootlegs or sprints and stuff like that. In true one-on-one pass blocking reps, he is not a left tackle that is worth the money that he's getting. He's a great name, but besides that, you're not getting the value. I think, again, the contract I think he got was fair. But I don't think that you necessarily need to invest that in him when you could say, all right, Trent, flip to the right side where you're better. We're going to get Anton Harrison in the third round, who's a starter and much better value. You know what I'm saying? When we revisit, and again, once the draft is over and we revisit this, we can say, all right, like, I don't know what the plan was. They clearly just left this big hole, and now you have to rely on people who
and sometimes it works. They did it with D-back last year, and it wasn't nearly as bad as everyone thought. Everyone's like, how in the world, and again, they drafted some places, but there's certain times where you're just like, they're going to address this, right? And they're like, oh, I guess not. You let JC go, and they didn't get a number one guy or draft a first rounder, which a lot of people thought they would do. And everyone's like, wow, so that's it, huh? And it worked. It worked okay. So yeah, sometimes it does work out. Sometimes patient works out. I just feel like this is the type of approach you have with Tom Brady as your quarterback, and knowing that you can cover up a lot of your deficiencies instead of we got to friggin' do something big because we are chasing a lot of guys up there and we're not going to catch them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it feels like accepting your fate and just kind of riding it out, for the time being and kicking the can a little bit further down the road. So I'm not entirely sure. But if Bill Belichick was any other GM and he'd had the 3 years that the Patriots have had since Tom Brady's departure, he'd be GMing for his life right now, and he would have a different approach.
I think that's fair. And I think 2021, I think that season was fine. I'm not saying he should. 2020 was right. It's been tough circumstances. 2020 was COVID year. 2021, he has a almost completely brand new offense, and they weren't bad. They fizzled out towards the end, of course. But the egregious one where you're like, yeah, Belichick, you effed up. Like, I'm not giving you any slack, is the coaching situation last year. Like, that was all on Bill. He said it himself. I'm sure he takes that one to the face. But it also is a reason why I'm not so worried about how conservative he's been this far, because we saw how aggressive they were with coaching. They literally put out a statement for the first time ever saying they were searching for an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, they didn't. Robert Kraft was here, and he was holding Bill's hand and saying, write this. and send it out, like
whatever the reason. It doesn't matter if it came from the top, whatever the reason is. There is Kraft cares, and Belichick, I'm sure, wants to keep his job. They're close. They're plenty close. I'm sure they're in contact, and Bill is very aware that Kraft isn't happy because he said so publicly. So I understand that people think they're being conservative. They're not trying hard enough. I just think they're trying to find good values and not completely, waste assets when they could get them in other avenues for cheaper and not, you're going to have to deal with the backlash of people being like, oh, but, this is a rookie trying to start. But they have a bunch of number twos. But if you, again, think about it, they go spread. Yeah, they don't have a number one, but not every defense has multiple corners who are good one-on-one. Most only have one or two. You know what I'm saying?
There's no doubt.
You're
not wrong, Taylor. No, you're not wrong at all. I'm saying a free agent class like this one, I don't believe that there was anything they had to leap out at. I actually do think a prudent approach makes more sense because you're going to get more value later on if you wait once teams blow their wad and overpay guys and this and that. It wasn't a very exciting, but it's got to tell you a couple things. People are smarter about who they allow to get to free agency nowadays. Number two is you put yourself in this position just based on the fact of, other decisions and personnel decisions that you've made. My only fear with them is not, this isn't they should have gone out and done this. It's that a lot needs to happen, and you want to make sure that it's not urgency, meaning go sign the first people. It's urgency, meaning we have to get much, much, much better versus we'll be fine if we just plug here and here, and then I'll coach the shit out of things, and so will Bill, and we'll be fine. Because that's been a philosophy in the past. Bill's like, get me guys who know what I'm talking about, and we'll just friggin' out. I'm 10 wins in my sleep, and he's normally right. 11 wins. 11-5 was a bad year. My fear with this team is, as you pointed out earlier, I think that the coaching debacle being as profound as it was last year almost gives them a little bit of a crutch to say, don't worry, so much of that was attributable to the coaching situation, which I messed up. Now that I've fixed that, we'll be fine. And I don't know that they necessarily will be fine just based on players alone.
And I mean, that's fair, but you said it earlier also, like everybody has draft capital, everybody has this, that,
like this is the philosophy, and I'm not calling anybody out, but this comment right here, 8-9 with no OC, now we have Billy O. That's fine. You have to look at the wins and who you played and who was playing for those teams when you played them and determine whether or not this was a team that was actually really good. And I don't think so. And you even go back 2 years ago, you might be talking only a couple of quality wins total. At this year, I might say the Chargers win was the only win that I think was like a legit quality win that they had. So again, I think they were significantly worse than their record. I think you look at it and say 8-9, one game out of second. I don't think that tells a fair tale.
Well, sure, but look at the fact the Ravens game, they were very much in reach and then fumbled twice. The Raiders game where they completely shat the bed. The Packers game where you got to overtime with Bailey Zappi. Like, yeah, the 8-9 thing, you could say, oh, well, they beat bad teams. Yeah, well, they also lost plenty of games they should have won. That could have been a 12-4, 12-5, these new schedules. But that could have been
I can only do 16 game records myself too. It's so weird to say.
In my brain, it doesn't work.
No,
but yeah, I mean,
the math doesn't work.
It's if you look back at a lot of those games and say, literally, if they were just not screwing themselves, not getting terrible penalties at bad times, like a false start or a hold, or Trent Brown completely missing a guy who's standing next to him in pass protection, things like that, where legitimately, if they're just prepared better, you could tell the offense is good enough to get down the field, to put drives together. And then you need better coordination and, using Hunter Henry, who still leads the team in touchdowns over the past 2 years, even though they only had 2 yet last year. You know what I'm saying? There's plenty of ways for this team to be effective. And regardless of whether or not they get a number one, it's still going to be a defensive-led football team. And they have one of the best defenses in football with almost all of their starters coming back. Yeah. So, you have to understand this is not an offensive juggernaut. Maybe it won't be for a couple years until they have better opportunities to get that guy, although I still think they're going to get Zay Flowers. But even if they do that, this is a defensive-led team that can legitimately give trouble to any of the league's best offenses. Like, think of how many times Patrick Mahomes has been shut out in half against Belichick. I think it's almost every time he's played him. So even with the great players, there's still two sides of the game. Their defense is fantastic and obviously needs some help in the secondary, but they're not that far away. They have that chemistry, and the offense literally just needs to not lose them games. They have the personnel to do that. And if they get that number one, that's where it's okay. All right. Now we have two parts of the team that are really, really strong. Also need to improve special teams. Should talk about that as well. Special teams killed them plenty last year.
I'm leaving special teams and punting to Alex Barth. Okay, they'll be on the Patriots. I'm just kidding. Addressing this comment right here, I like the new guy. He talks sense. The new guy, in case you don't know who this is Taylor Kyles, the new beat reporter here, CLNS Media, replacing the departed Evan Lazar, but very much in the Evan Lazar mold. This is a guy who, as this Twitter follower will say, speaks facts. He understands football. He might be a little bit sunny with his analysis, but that's okay. He will get hardened over time. That's a fact. But no,
once I get to Boston, I'm sure you're going to get a very different version of Taylor.
Exactly. Exactly. No, so again, I get it, and it makes sense to pit it that way. But I do believe that. I think both fans and I think there's a lot of fans out there who think it's kind of like Billy O will save all and competent coaching will make all of the difference in the world. And I do think that is a factor, but not the only factor. I want to make sure that Bill's not viewing it that way, because I think that would be a mistake. Thinking that a new coach saves all, because they do need a lot. And again, maybe there is something coming. So let's pivot to a couple other things we're talking about. And this isn't on the sexy front, but spend a minute here. Patriots hosting free agent safety Taylor Rapp again. You like safeties, you need safeties. What's your thought here?
Yeah, so Rapp's a pretty versatile player. I believe last year he was primarily a deep safety, but when you look at all his plays, they come closer to the box. So his scheme would be a bit interesting. I don't love his burst, frankly, and his acceleration. Even in split field coverages, there were times where he wasn't able to stop completions that I think a lot of other safeties on the market would have been able to, even like a Duron Harmon, for example. But again, I think he's a solid player. He's a pretty good tackler. I know his tackling rate or missed tackle rate is very low, although to be fair, I think he had like 6 really bad missed tackles last season where you say, okay, that's a little concerning, but you hope that you bring him into the system and you can shore up that consistency a little bit. But not a super sexy visit. Was more of a depth guy, like a 2-3 safety for the Rams. Got into a fight with Jalen Ramsey, I think, a year or two ago, which is pretty funny. If they're in the same division, that'll be real good. But yeah, it wouldn't move the needle for noodle. It wouldn't move the needle for me a ton, but they need the depth back there, and I'm sure that he would come pretty cheap, considering I don't think he's gotten much attention this far in free agency.
No, not, and that's not always a good thing.
And safeties are going for pretty cheap right now, so who knows?
Yeah,
unless you're Jesse Bates.
Now, again, you're talking about splashy. You're talking about need. As I was picking your brain earlier. I'm going to hit this one first. A name that's been brought up, Odell Beckham, still out there, is a name. I don't know if he's anywhere near the player he ever was, or he ever will be. But I still think you're buying high on the name there. I believe I saw a tweet from you, Taylor, which said a while back, of all the receivers out there, this is the one that does move the needle for you. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that would move the needle for you. And that was a list that included Juju on it. And you said, the only one of these names that moves the needle here of potentially obtainable receivers is Odell Beckham. And so he's out there. And then this first report comes in again, from ESPN. 15 to 20 is what he's looking for. And you know what? I'm also looking for 15 to 20, and I'm not going to get it. So we have that in common. But other than that, honestly, and what I do think he's going to get is he's going to get one of those fake 3-year, $39 million deals, which is really 1 in 13. And that'll be that. So I think he can be had probably for something like that.
Yeah, but
Do
this
you
is
do
also one
it?
of those situations where, yeah, like with free agents, you have to also remember this isn't Madden. People need to want to go to your team. And frankly, especially after last year, I don't think Mac Jones is a super attractive target when you got names like Dak Prescott as someone who you could potentially play for. Dak also had a down year, but he's also had fantastic seasons and, is physically a very talented quarterback. He's just got to work on his decision making, of course. But the reason he moves the needle for me is I know that reports were saying in the workouts that he did, he's lost all of his explosion. The dude has been out of football and he's torn his ACL. I assume he's not going to be as explosive as he was, back in 2013 or whatever. So yeah, you're not going to get the same version. I'm sure he still has phenomenal ball skills. He's always been a great route runner. And the reason he was such a freak and like a Hall of Fame talent was that he combined track speed and he has two parents that were college athletes who are very physically gifted. So he combined crazy juice with fantastic route running, great hands. If you take the juice away, he's still a fantastic route runner, so he can separate. I'm sure he's probably still got a little something after the catch, even if he's not, that home run threat that he was. And people were saying his ball skills are still there. He's still making ridiculous catches. So that's why I think he's someone, and then even by name, defensive coordinators, unless you're a total jag, if you're someone like Odell Beckham Jr., then they're probably still going to throw in some brackets, just knowing that that's the guy that they want to be throwing to. And whether or not he's a home run hitter, he's still going to be able to make those plays. I don't think Juju's necessarily that person. Maybe in some red zone situations if the Patriots want to use him that way. But yeah, I think Odell Beckham is the only person who was on the list of available free agents. Even like Paris Campbell got signed today. I don't even think he would have necessarily been that guy either. If they can afford him, bring him in. But if he doesn't want to play with Mac Jones, then you got to eat that. And I feel like that's ultimately what it's going to come down to is where he goes and who his quarterback is. And obviously, if someone's willing to pay him as much as he can get on the market.
Yeah. So, but he's out there. So again, short answer, maybe.
Maybe if he wants to, I'm with it. Like if they want to throw him the bag, then yeah, sure. Like you said, if it's essentially a 1 year deal, yeah, see what he's got.
Or maybe it's a 2. But yeah, what sized bag are you throwing at him?
Oh, I don't want to say 15. Probably the 15 is not terrible. I wouldn't go in at 20. I'm not going past 15. But if it's like 15, I think he's probably going to get somewhere a little less, maybe like 14 and a half, somewhere along that range. I'm fine giving him that because you have the cap space. Unless they're planning on spending it elsewhere, you can make one investment where as long as you're not paying for it in the future, then sure, throw him a little extra money than you would normally and see what he's got.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we have there. The last name that I know you wanted to discuss as somebody who's out there and somebody who would be a needle mover and, someone the Patriots absolutely could try to get in on is Dalton Schultz. Who right now, oddly enough, has not been linked to anyone as far as I've seen. Now, I haven't seen a lot of reports here close to or this or that. This one's kind of interesting. What do you think and now what I do know is this is, considered to be a very deep tight end draft. So there could be some people who are just going to kind of save up and see if they have a position in need and the right guy is there, that's a place you can get it. But what's up with the market here? Is surprising?
Yeah, so obviously he was a top tight end on the market. Hayden Hurst, who is probably the second best tight end on the market, he signed with the Panthers to a pretty modest deal. I'm assuming the difficulty is that Schultz probably wants to get paid a significant amount because he knows he's the best on the market. But like you said, not a lot of people are going to want to throw him a ton of money when they know that they could probably draft somebody in the 3rd or 4th round who, yeah, they may be more of a spot starter and not somebody that you can rely on to be the guy, but they can develop into that and you didn't spend nearly as much. The reason he moves the needle for me, though, he's one of the few true two-way tight ends where he's a good blocker. He's got strong hands. His technique is sound. He plays with good leverage where on those like combo blocks with a tackle, he gets legitimately good movement. When he gets to the second level, he's pancaking guys. I don't know if there's many other tight ends I've seen where like on those crack tosses that the Patriots love or on screens or things like that, if he's got a block down field, he blocks pissed off. And I really like that. I think it's something the Patriots haven't had since Martellus Bennett. So beyond that, I think he's also the kind of receiver that you can split out legitimately. I think Hunter Henry's got some of this, but because now he's their only tight end, it kind of hamstrings him a little bit. But I think having someone like Dalton Schultz gives you a situation where you can be in 1st and 10 with Schultz and Henry on the field. A team would legitimately have to respect the run because of Schultz and Henry being decent. then you spread them out, and then those guys have great matchups up the seam, or you can get big plays and things like that. And Schultz's ball tracking is fantastic. He makes contested catches. He's good downfield, which is what you missed in Jonnu Smith. And he brings you not the same yak ability that Jonnu did, but he's still pretty good. He's got some wiggle for a big guy, and a lot of athleticism. So I think if they were able to bring him in, then you're cooking with a little more gas, because it's okay. We can play with scheme. We got two legitimately good pass catchers at tight end who take some of the stress off receivers. You only need two guys in there. So yeah, he's the one guy left on the market outside of OBJ who, if they sign him, I'd be like, all right, we might be moving here. But besides that, not a ton of game-breaking talent, I think. And I'm not even saying that Schultz is a game-breaker. I don't want to say that either. But he is a very good player who I think could be a difference maker in their scheme.
Yeah. Another name that came up today, not because of anything real, just because of people tracking what they do in social media. Mike Gesicki, followed the Patriots and something and this and that. But
Mac
he was
followed him. And...
I know, whatever. It doesn't matter. That stuff doesn't mean anything. A lot of people follow a lot of things. But as a name that was out there, is that somebody if you had on the cheap that you would bat your eyes at maybe if they were around?
Yes, but
because the Dolphins just stopped using him as a pass catcher last year. They just kind of kept him in line. He's a guy who had some production for them, and then they just stopped using him. I mean, the amount of routes that he ran just did generally, like, he was just kind of put on ice. But there's a guy who I think it can be utilized as a pass catcher. He's shown it before.
I mean, if you want to use him like Travis Kelce, and Belichick is okay with that, where you just give him the smallest blocking responsibilities possible, because I'm pretty sure he stated last year, once the Dolphins had that whole schematic shift where they wanted to look more like the Niners, he almost left. I think they tried to deal him because he
wasn't playing, he wasn't running routes, he wasn't doing anything for them. Yeah.
He does not like blocking, and that doesn't make him a good fit in New England, because if he's not a good blocker, then you can't really get the same matchups. Teams might end up just putting a corner on him, although still he is a matchup because he's got amazing ball skills and he's a huge target. It would be exciting if they signed him, because it says, okay, they know how to use him. They've discussed this. He has a role that he's comfortable with and that they're comfortable with, because his receiving upside is fantastic. That'd be really fun to watch. But again, just because he doesn't like the whole physicality part of the game outside of being a receiver, I never thought that it was a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah. I have something on my mind I'm not going to share with you, because it'll take us completely off the rails, and I refuse to do it, but I may spring it on you tomorrow when I start to because you know what happens? I get impatient, Taylor. Okay. I get impatient. I want stuff to happen. So I'm going to start throwing out some crazy shit tomorrow that they may or may not do. But we will, we'll see. What we do promise you, as always, is we will jump back on here immediately if there's some sort of breaking news, or we will try to. There's a great deal more Patriots programming coming up on this channel. We're going to be premiering the Pat's Interference podcast with Andrew Callahan and his guest, Mike Giardi, former colleague of mine. Giardi, when we worked together over at NBC, they're going to kind of grade the Patriots Free Agency haul so far and what they think that they could do next. So check that out. It's a really excellent podcast with two guys who really know their stuff and are fun to listen to. So check that out. And then 7:00, Cadlick and Barth are back with another live Patriots Beat Free Agency edition. They've been doing it every night, kind of picking up the pieces of whatever is left over. Hopefully there's some more news for them to discuss than we had on this broadcast here, but they're going to break it down. Make sure you check that out as well. Subscribe to all of these podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that little bell to get your notifications when we do go live. Follow Taylor Kyles, the newest Patriots CLNS beat reporter here, covering the team for us, and all of his excellent coverage as he kind of continues to break down the players that they're bringing in, the players that are leaving, and how they're going to fit and how the pieces are going to fit together here on the field for the Patriots in 2023. So again, make sure you check out all of Taylor Kyle's work over at clnsmedia.com and follow him on Twitter for nonstop. There's nothing you don't have a comment on, Taylor. I'll tell you that. there's
I might be addicted to Twitter.
Something happens in the football world, but the good thing is you know enough to have opinions, which is amazing. But something happens in the football world, Taylor's on it. So make sure you give him a follow. It's an excellent, excellent follow for really good information. Thank you guys for jumping on with us all week long. We really have enjoyed and appreciated it here on Taylor's first week. And like I said, we'll cap it off tomorrow, Friday, with another show here, another live show, just kind of recapping whatever goes on in the day, talking about some other things. I'm going to spin my little crazy theory tomorrow as well, and see if I can't get Taylor to quit in the first week. But
you're crazy, but you're entertaining. I'm happy. I'm here for it.
All right, we're going to wrap it, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.